Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Want to walk through a few other stories here before we open up the phone lines and let you kind of help us figure out where we are going to focus for the remainder of the day. It looks like on this Benghazi deal that the Obama administration has identified the fall guy for it, and it's a woman. You want to talk about a war on women, you're looking at it in the Obama administration. Remember, President Obama's out there all the time. We got to have equal pay for women. It's a scandal. It's a crime. It's sexist that men are paid more than women. But in his own White House, the males are paid 18% more than the female staffers. And he just blindly goes out there and keeps blathering on about equal pay while he's not coming anywhere close to doing it himself. And it turns out now that they're going to blame this whole deal on Catherine Rumler. You probably never heard of her, but she heads up the White House counsel's office. So she's President Obama's kind of personal lawyer. And now the story that they have concocted is that the CIA and people on President Obama's staff, like Ben Rhodes, they wanted to release the comprehensive timeline of what happened before the election. So that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to be the good guys. They wanted to get this information out there. But according to BuzzFeed, this is a left-leaning outfit now, BuzzFeed, those plans were quashed, however, when the White House counsel's office, which is led by Catherine Rumler, she's the one now that's being thrown under the bus, thrown under the train. She advised the officials to not release any information to the public out of fear it could be used against them in any subsequent investigations and other legal complications. All right, so they've got their scapegoat. It's going to be Catherine Rumler, somebody you never heard of, which is fine with them because they've got their pet people they want to protect, and she apparently is not one of them. You know, one of the things we've complained about, oh, by the way, the U.S. attorney that was responsible to investigate Fox News, the guy that went after the phone records at Fox News, now we find out it was 5 Fox News reporters. They tapped their offices, their phone lines, or monitored their phone lines at the White House, at the Capitol building, and several other places. And they even went after the phone records of James Rosen's parents, went after the phone records of his parents. And it turns out that the attorney that's responsible for all of these incredible violations of the Constitution and freedom of the press and every other thing you can think of, is the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. His name is Ronald C. Machen. He's the man, according to Breitbart.com, who is responsible for the aggressive surveillance and phone record scrutiny at Fox News. He is a big donor to the Obama campaigns. Over the years, he has donated $4,350 to Obama's campaigns. This is unbelievable to me. So here's a guy that has the power of the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, one of the most powerful district attorneys or U.S. attorneys in the country. He is deliberately going after people on the Obama enemies list, and he's a big-time donor to the Obama campaign. So not even a pretense of objectivity or justice there whatsoever. And you might have heard this, that U.S. officials have identified 5 men that they think might be behind the attack on Benghazi. So they got 5 guys. They've identified them. They know who they are. They know where they are. They've got enough evidence to seize them by military force as suspected terrorists. But get this. This is Associated Press now. But get this. They could pick these guys up right now. They got enough evidence to nail these guys right now as suspected terrorists, but they do not think they have enough evidence to try them in a U.S. civilian court. You know, and my question here, these guys are in Libya. How in the world do they think it's right to try these guys in a U.S. civilian court because the crime they committed was in Libya. It was an act of war. It was an act of terrorism. And so because they need more evidence to be able to conduct a criminal trial, they're letting them run around free. I mean, this is just absolute insanity, sacrificing our national security for some bizarre notion of justice. Again, treating the war on terror, the war by devout fundamentalists of the Islamic persuasion, the war waged by devout Muslims against the United States, they are treating it not as a war, but as a criminal enterprise. And you won't be surprised to hear this. We've talked often about how our institutions of education, pretty much from kindergarten all the way up through even the most elite schools in this country, are nothing more than indoctrination centers for liberal political theology. Got it looking at a list here of the keynote commencement speakers at Ivy League institutions. You know how many of the 7 Ivy League schools, these are the most elite schools in the country, you know how many conservatives are speaking at a 2013 commencement address at an Ivy League school? The answer, you will not be surprised to know, is an absolute flat 0. Not one conservative speaking at an Ivy League graduation. Number to call if you want to help us direct traffic for the remainder of the program, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Something we've talked about in the opening segments grabbed your attention. Call us and we'll talk about it. Back to this Ivy League thing just for a moment. A campus reform investigation found that 96% of the faculty and staff at Ivy League schools who contributed to the 2012 presidential race donated to President Obama. 96%. That's our factoid of the day. 96% of the faculty and staff at Ivy League schools who made donations in the 2012 presidential election made donations to Barack Obama. 96%. Fisher factoid of the day right there. From the 8 schools, I guess there's 8 technically in the Ivy League, they gave $1.2 million to the Obama campaign and $114,000 to Mitt Romney, almost a 10-1 margin. So the liberal parade continues. Now, it's been interesting. Let's grab some phone calls and go ahead and start with that. I'm going to talk about the way the left-wing media has really turned on Barack Obama over what they're doing to the Associated Press and James Rosen. I mean, the Washington Post is after him. You got Dana Milbank. You have Eugene Robinson. New York Times is out with an editorial today criticizing, using the word chilling to describe what the Obama administration has done. So it's interesting. Boy, he has gored the wrong ox on this. When he sicked the Department of Justice, the Department of Injustice, when he sicked them on the media, I mean, that poked these people right where they live, and they do not like it. 888-589-8840, number to call. Let's go to Ann in Little Rock, Arkansas. Ann, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Brian. Brian, I think it's outrageous that anybody that commits a terrorist act should be tried in the United States as just a regular criminal. And I believe that somebody ought to pass a law that states that anyone that does a terrorist act should be tried as just a regular criminal. There should be a law against him doing that.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, this is an act of war. It's done in the war on terror. There's no way in the world these people deserve a criminal a trial in an American civil court. That's absurd.
That's right.
That's absurd. Go ahead, Ann. You had another point?
Yes, I certainly agree. And that the trial, the man that killed those people in Fort Hood, I think it's absurd that they're paying them $278,000 and the victims have not been paid anything. And I'd like to say if the Obama wanted to release the timeline before the election, why aren't they doing it now? Where was he?
Well, that's a great question. All right, well, listen, I appreciate it, Ann. And you know what Ann is talking about is this Major Nidal Malik Hassan, the guy that shot up Fort Hood, killed 13 fellow soldiers, 14 victims if you count the unborn baby, which I do, and wounded 32 others. He has been collecting full military pay all this time since 2009, $278,000. Meanwhile, some of his victims have been eating top ramen noodles for weeks on end because they're broke. And because it was classified as an instance of workplace violence, they're not eligible for combat pay. They're not eligible for Purple Hearts. They're not eligible for the kind of medical care that properly goes to people who have been wounded in combat. It's just criminal what's going on there. Let's go to Lee, Bluefield, Virginia. Lee, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Yes, well, it seems to me like if you listen to this stuff, everything comes back almost to Eric Holder. And I remember when Bush was in there, he was Attorney General, I think his last name was Gonzalez. He let 10 attorneys go, which he had the right to get to do, and they pressured him to resign. And everything that comes up, the Fort Hood shooting, about the IRS and everything, comes back to Eric Holder, and the man can say, I didn't know nothing about it. When's somebody going to get some guts up there and demand that this guy be let go?
Well, you know, that's a good question, and I think there isn't any doubt in anybody's mind that's paying attention. I appreciate the call, Lee. There's no doubt that Eric Holder should resign. I mean, remember at the very beginning of the Obama administration back in 2009, we talked about this at length. You had the footage, actual footage of the Black Panthers in front of a polling booth intimidating white voters. I mean, they had the combat fatigues, they had the batons, they had the dark glasses, they had the combat boots, and they were intimidating white voters, turning them away from the polling place. And the Department of Justice at that time got convictions against these guys, confessions from these guys, basically a kind of a plea deal or something of that sort. And Eric Holder come in and said, hey, look, these are black guys that are doing this. These are black guys that are violating the law, black guys that are violating the Voting Rights Act. I'm not going to prosecute them. They're black. They're my brothers. They're in the hood. They're getting off scot-free. Drop the entire case. Should have been fired right then. Focal Point AFR Talk.